Hey, what's up? All right, so this is the first homework assignment, and it doesn't look like much, but it should cover most of the basics of doing all this Maya stuff, this modeling. At least this basic modeling. We're going to get into a little bit more advanced in the next class. But if you look at here, on this left side, you have a little cube, and then you next to it, you have a result. So the goal of this assignment is to uh, try to get it to look like this result. Maybe not so much on this one that's just random scaling and moving verts. Um, but like for this one, try to get it to look like this little cup slash pipe. Try to fix up this big gash in the mesh. Try to get this inset that goes through. Try to get this fill hole fixed. Get this tower looking like it. And finally, this spoon. So I'm going to walk you through that right now. So for this first one, just duplicate it. We're just going to move it over to the other side. And duplicate is Control D. And I'm just going to, rotate this, scale it, kind of stretch it. Let's get a few of those in there. Let's keep going. Right there. Scale up. I'm just moving these around, and then I'm going to go in revert mode. Kind of start moving some of these. I'm not looking for just organization of these verts at all. I just want you to have them jumbled up. And then notice how when I click on this, it's all highlighting at once, meaning it's all one object. I want you to mesh combine. Boom. There you go. That's the first one. And this one, notice the only difference between these is that they're the same, but these are split apart. So this is mesh separate. So we go up to mesh separate, and I just command duplicated this and then moved it over. Boom, there you go. Done, done. Next one is this. It's dealing with this premise of box modeling, how this could ordinarily be made with a torus. If I create a torus over here, bang, and then give it 4 on this, give it a little twist, and that you can scale it up into that shape. But I want to drive home the point that you can make pretty much any shape in Maya with a box. But to save some time, you don't always have to. So I am duplicating it, moving it over, and I'm just selecting these outside edges. And I shift selected all of them. I'm going to scale in. And I'm going to scale on the red and the blue axis at the same time. If I go from the top like this, it's going to get all stretched, right? Because it's scaling from this interior one, which has all axes. Look how the blue, the red, and the green are all coming in at one time. Now, if I go in from the side, you see these other manipulators on here that you can pull in. And this one, note how the y-axis is staying stagnant, but the blue and the red x and z and x axes are going in. So we're going to do that. And then we have to get that lip right. And if we look at this mesh, you can see that you have an edge loop around here. And remember that extrusions always create an edge loop around what you extruded. Like if I extrude only this face, it has an edge loop right here. See how it completes itself? So I'm going to undo that. Undo that poly extrude. Selecting all the faces, extruding, and I'm just going to immediately scale. I could also extrude and then change this offset. Either way works. Then I'm going to extrude, and I'm going to drag down this arrow right there. Boom, done. One final touch-up thing is that you'll notice if I go into object mode and click off, I have some kind of hard edges on there. To get rid of those hard edges, I'm going to go in, select all those hard edges, go into Mesh Display, and Soften Edge right there. Boom. See how soft they are now? Perfect. All right. This one, duplicate, move over, This is a simple bridge. So if I click this top one and then shift double click this bottom one, you see how it highlights that entire span. Same with here. Boom. Modeling toolkit, bridge. There we go. Now this one has a few of the other premises in there, but note that I have deleted some components, namely the edges. So if I want this shape, I'm going to have to get rid of these kind of spans in here. I suppose I could have this exact shape in there, but I would just have some extra spans that I don't quite need. So I'm going to shift double click both of those edge loops. You'll see that in wireframe mode, they go all the way around. And I'm going to control delete. If you just do regular delete, you'll see that you still have vertices right here. See how I can select those sneaky verts? So whenever you're deleting edges, be sure to control delete to take the verts with it, right? Now, next step, select the top face and the bottom face. And then I'm just gonna control E to extrude. And I'm gonna do the offset again. Bring that in a little bit. And then we need these faces to be a hole, right? That goes all the way through. So what I'm just going to do is straight up delete that face. If I go into edge mode and I double click the top one, double click the bottom one, since it's 4 edges on top and 4 edges on the bottom in there, if you count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, we can just simply bridge those together. Boom, another one done. Now this one, duplicate that first mesh and drag it over. And I'm just going to try to keep these on a line. If you double click this one, I suppose you could alternatively extrude across here and then target weld these verts together and these ones as well and do the same until it's done. But there's a lot easier ways to do that. So I'm going to undo that poly extrude. Whenever you're undoing poly extrudes, make sure you see undo poly extrude in that menu. Otherwise, you're going to get some duplicate verts right on top of each other. And so I'm going to go in, and I'm not going to use a tool that's here at all. Instead, what we're looking for is mesh fill hole right here. Boom. So it's fixed. However, we don't have any sort of edge flow going across this. None going this way either. So I'm going to multi-cut from here. Boom, bang. Right here. Right here. And I'm just cutting across to kind of fix up where those points should meet. So if I go here, here, there, and there we go. Done. Donezo. You can see they look the same. All right, so now time for the tower. So let's go in here. I immediately want to start with this kind of top part of it. And what we're going to need to do is just think about this in terms of extrusions, multi-cuts, and all that stuff. So you'll see that I have an edge that kind of goes around here because these kind of spikes or like kernelings, or I don't know exactly what they call them, like these ramparts, kind of extrude up, and they need geometry to extrude up out of. If I try to just bring one of these up, I'd only have that triangle, you know. So I need another edge loop in here, and I could go into multi-cut and just start cutting across here. Unfortunately, I believe multi-cut doesn't really cut well across kind of poles like this. Notice how all these are going to one point. This is the reason why we avoid this type of geometry, is because edge loops and stuff cannot flow across that very easily. So instead, we need to make our own. We could cut across here like this. And it's a little bit time consuming. Remember the detail that whenever you extrude, it creates an edge loop around what you just did, right? So if I extrude here and I offset, very similar to how we made the lip of the mug or the lip of the cup back there, we have a bunch of these ready to go now. So if I go in, and I'm just selecting every other one, And you can control the thickness, you can move it up and down. Either way, it's going to work. We get that nice top now. Now let's look at this mesh further. So we have a sort of nice round conjunction in there. So I'm going to, in order to do that, I need more geometry there to hold out the thickness of this kind of upper lip. So I'm going to put an edge loop right there. And my next one is going to go about there. I'm just eyeballing it again. Like, I'm not looking for precision. I just want to make sure you guys are understanding the tools that are being taught here. So I need to bring this in uniformly. Again, remember the outsides of that cup, how it used to be that box, and we kind of scaled them in on those two axes, the blue and the red. We're going to do the same here. Boom. Perfect. And then we're going to multi-cut again, because I want a nice kind of smoother flow into this bottom part. Right there. Nice. And lastly, we need to make this door. And you make the door, like, just look at how these edges kind of flow into each other. So there's no edge loop around the outside of this kind of window junction. This doesn't count as an edge loop. I can't easily just select that. So what we know it is not an extrusion there. So I'm just going to make a multi-cut there. And so you can tell it's not an extrusion to get that initial door frame of it, but to get this lip on the outside, that's definitely an extrusion, because look, I can select all the way around that easily. Right there, easily as well. So I'm going to raise this vert up. I'm going to extrude now, because see how we have that like kind of silhouette of the door ready? So now I'm going to extrude. And I'm going to use the offset tool, or offset parameter. And I'm going to select that edge loop and extrude that as well. Let's get some thickness in there. Hell yeah. And I have one extra edge loop in there, so might as well throw that extrusion in there. I won't dock you if you miss that though. Right there. You can even make that go as deep as you want. Hell yeah. Now the spoon, right? It's gonna be a bit more intense than the others. But if you break it down, when we're just looking at it, it's not too bad. Notice how I was on 3 smooth mode as well as the final product. So if I go back into 1, it's a little bit more digestible. So first of all, we can just break this down into its primitive shape. This right here is basically a long rectangle with some beveled edges. This right here, notice, is an edge loop right there. It goes all the way around. And that is, you can therefore determine that that's a bevel. I mean, not a bevel, I bet, extrusion. Sorry about that. Didn't want to be misleading. And so I think we should just go ahead and start making this shape. Let's go. So I'm going to scale this down. And it doesn't have to be the exact dimensions of the spoon, right? Just want to make sure you get all the techniques down. So I'm going to scale it to approximately the size of that. Scale this down, boom. Now immediately, I have this hole down here. So I'm going to section that part off from the rest of the model. So I'm going to do that with an extrusion. I could have just multi-cut and dragged out. Either way would work. So I could do that, or if I undo that, just multi-cut, then drag out. Simple. And then we're also going to multi-cut, and we're going to multi-cut down the middle of this. And remember, if you hold Control when you're multi-cutting, you can insert an edge loop. And if you middle click, it's going to set that edge loop around there, directly in the middle of that span. So now we know we have one line of symmetry down the middle. And when you're modeling this kind of stuff, always try to keep it symmetrical if you can. Sometimes a character is asymmetrical, and that's it'll get a little bit more complicated, but you know, still manageable. So I'm going to extrude out here, kind of bring this a little bit wider. So notice how it tapers out right there. So we're just doing that. And then we need to make the body of the spoon. So we need this edge loop right here to be kind of separate from the rest of it. You'll notice that we have an edge loop going around here. So you know that this is also an extrusion, and we're kind of bringing in those faces one by one into this dish shape. So let's go make that first. Let's go make that silhouette that we're going to eventually extrude into. So if I extrude this out, and I'm putting that at the pretty much at the end of where this spoon will go. And then I'm going to set in some edge loops into the middle of this, because we need to kind of pull those out to create some dimension there. So if I go in here, multi-cut, boom, bang, pow, right there. Now we can just shift just click drag over all those to select them and just scale them in one axis. And know exactly what we're going to do there. Boom, right there. And there we go. So now we need to create the dish shape of the spoon. And notice how the bottom also goes down like that. So we can do those both at the same time by dragging over the middle of that. And I'm just going to pan my camera around, make sure I got all of those faces. And I'm just going to Control E. I'm going to offset right here. So this is that initial lip of the spoon. Now this bottom one is kind of a dish shape from the very start. So what I'm going to do is deselect this top one, or just select the bottom one again. I can just click off, start selecting bottom. But I like to just get it from the side, and then Control left click drag to kind of deselect that. And then we pull this down. And then now we start extruding more. Let's get this offset going in there a little bit more. Notice how it didn't kind of really nicely scale these down in here. I'm going to leave those off then. And I'm just going to scale it manually. And I'm going to scale it in on X and Z. I could have done that same blue or same little side square like this. Let's bring that to the center and down to where it will need to be. Now I'm going to multi-cut across and just get it a little bit more gradual in there. Have it like a little bit sharper of a dip at the very beginning, then taper off. Now that part of the spoon is done. Now if I pull this out, I can start making this loop. The loop is exactly the same as this one right here. We're going to do the same methodology. Make sure both sides are selected. Control E, offset a little bit in there. And then delete to poke that hole in the faces of the mesh. And then shift double click both the top and bottom and bridge. Boom, simple. Right there. And I'm going to curve this a little bit. And we're pretty much done. So if I press 3 now, it's looking pretty good. But notice when I press 3 on this one, it's a little bit sharper. That's because I've beveled these edges. Look at how much more dense these outer edges are on the top of the spoon and on the lip of the spoon there, as are these kind of edges on the inset there. And what we call in those what we call those in the industry is a retaining edge loop. So if I go in here, I'm just going to scale this up a little bit to taste. There. I'm going to shift. I'm just going to double click right here, just like that, and it tried to go around the whole mesh, but it couldn't because there's some junctures right here where they have 5 polys coming together right there. So just shift double click the other ones that aren't quite working out, Same with here. And I'm going to get these interior ones too. And we're going to use a tool called Bevel to get a little bit fancy. When we bevel, notice how it automatically just cut those into the spoon. And then we're going to up the segments. I have to do 2 on these types of bevels, and then kind of reduce the fraction so it doesn't go as far. So I want a pretty sharp kind of side there, right there. And now when we smooth, notice how it has sharper edges. This interior inset needs to be beveled as well. Boom, bang, bevel, segments 2. And let's reduce that fraction. We should be good to go. We can also bevel these outside ones. Bevel. Right there. There we go. All right. So that's how we do the homework. I hope this is helpful. I know it's a little bit long, but I had to get through quite a few examples. But yeah. All right. See you later.